Whence they came, no one knows, but come they did. They threw up a 30 by 16-foot shack on a ridge in Mound Valley, Kansas, put up a large sign that read groceries, and smaller ones that let the traveling public know that meals and liquor were also available. And then they were ready for business. The Bender family had arrived. Ma, Pa, John, and Kate, 3 gruesome ghouls and 1 luscious one. The shack was only a 1-roomed affair, but a burlap drape that hung from the ceiling beams divided the interior into 2 areas of privacy: a saloon, an eatery, and the family's domestic quarters. Kate did the cooking, ran the saloon. A plank and trestles served as a bar, and showed a few curves at the front door when business was slack. Groups of patrons and local residents who were known were allowed to dine and leave with little more than gastronomical disturbances. Lone strangers rarely. Should an unknown traveller happen to come in for a meal and an eyeful of Kate when the place was free of other diners, he would be seated with his back to the curtain, and Pa or John would slam him with a hammer when his head moulded the burlap. Kate would then cut the victim's throat just to make sure he was dead, and united, they would throw the corpse into a 6-foot by 5-foot pit under the floorboards and out of the way. The Benders had 3 years of success. Then in March 1873, they killed a certain Dr. York and stirred up quite a mess of trouble for themselves. The doc was reported missing, and his brother Colonel York got together a posse who soon went looking for him. The posse halted at the Benders and questioned Kate. Yes, she'd seen the doc and even watered his horse, but that was all she knew. Perhaps the good colonel would like to return alone sometime to have his whiskey dregs read. Kate Bender was known as a sort of psychic and could read people's fortunes. Yes, ma'am, the colonel needed no second bidding. He would return. The posse thundered in the direction they were told by Kate, and the Benders had disappeared. Soon after, a wagon with their groceries sign on board was found abandoned near Thayer, Kansas, and the ticket agent at the local depot said he had sold 4 tickets to an old man who had a large woman, a youth, and a girl with him. Could these travellers have been the Benders? Not if the following theory is correct. Rumour has it that somehow Colonel York's suspicions were aroused while questioning Kate. His intuition had told him that she was perhaps lying. So he did return to the shack, but not alone, as had been requested, but with the armed men. They wiped out the family and burned the corpses nearby, after which York and 3 of his men disguised themselves and went through the ticket buying routine to get rid of any possible suspicion. As none of the bodies of the Benders' victims had been found at the time of this alleged cleanup, and there was no evidence against the family, why did York have them all killed? And if he had found damning evidence of guilt, why should he and his men cover their tracks? None of this posse ever talked, so the whole theory is likely just made up. In fact, it's likely that the Benders did actually escape. The deserted shack was not searched for some time, which rather points out that the Benders had aroused no suspicions in the Mound Valley region, but searched it was eventually, and the corpses of a 7-year-old girl and 8 men were found buried in the rear garden. The bodies were viciously mutilated, and it was estimated that the Benders had probably only netted $1,000 from their crimes. It was assumed that a lust for money wasn't their only motive. After the finding of the bodies, the legend was born, and there were actually many people in that area that came forward with stories of how they just escaped the Benders' clutches. Although they were never really found, I will probably read some of the individual character references I have on the where it mentions that what likely became of them. Pa Bender in particular apparently came to a grisly end.